Welcome to the Women in the Arena podcast, a platform dedicated to honoring America's women veterans who dare greatly in all aspects of life. I'm your host, Sarah Scully. At Women in the Arena, we harness the power of storytelling to illuminate the human experience. Through authentic narratives, we honor the resilience, authenticity, and leadership of women who have served our country. Our name, Women in the Arena, pays homage to Theodore Roosevelt's legendary speech, The Man in the Arena, recognizing the remarkable contributions of women in traditionally male-dominated domains. Welcome back to the Women in the Arena podcast. Today is a very special milestone for our show. Not only are we featuring one of my favorite humans I connected with this year, but we are also welcoming our first male guest. Now, as a reminder, the mission of this podcast is to amplify the voices and experiences of the women veteran community. But none of us walk this journey alone. Every community needs advocates, allies, and those who are willing to stand beside us. And inviting some great men into the conversation reflects that. We welcome all voices who are actively lifting, supporting, and empowering the veteran community as a whole. With that, I am so excited to introduce Jody Fletcher, a Special Operations Navy veteran and executive coach with over 3 decades of leadership and coaching experience across both military and corporate environments. I have had the privilege of working with Jody professionally and one-on-one, and I know firsthand the impact of his insights. This conversation has something for everyone, whether you are a veteran, civilian, leading teams, working on your personal goals, or just trying to navigate this wild thing called life. I can't wait for you to hear Jody's perspectives on leadership, human dynamics, and building organizations where people can truly thrive. Let's dive in. I hope you enjoy the show. Awesome. Well, Jody, welcome to the Women in the Arena podcast. You may not be a woman, but we're excited to have you on. And spoiler alert, you're our first male guest, so no pressure.
No pressure, right? That's a lot. I'm so excited to be here, but that is a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure. But when I was thinking about this season, one of my goals was to get a little bit more creative with our interviews and bring people in from the community that aren't necessarily who we usually interview, which is women veterans. And so top of mind for me was bringing in some guys who are awesome advocates for our community, are really amazing people. And of course, you're top of mind. So I'm just super excited that you're here.
Thank you. No, I'm honored to be here.
And I'm excited to be in the studio. This is the first time I've recorded in a studio in Wilmington, North Carolina. So shout out to the team at Unfiltered for having us. This is a super beautiful space. So to kick it off, can you just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your very impressive Navy career that lasted for quite some time, but now you're on to other things?
Absolutely. Jody Fletcher. I was a military brat, so I kind of grew up everywhere. And I joined the Navy in 1992 when I think I was 12 days after I turned 18 years old. And I did a little over 29 years. I retired as the Command Master Chief at 2MEF. And the first, couple of decades plus, I started out as a recon corpsman, a Special Operations Independent Duty corpsman. Was there for recon, force recon, and then when we stood up Marine Special Operations Command, I was there for all of that. And was just really lucky enough to be a part of all of that, and then to move on and be the Command Master Chief at 2nd Marine Division, at MARSOC, and then 2nd Marine Division, and then 2MEF. Never saw myself doing that, but that's where I ended up.
I feel like it's always the people who don't expect it for themselves and other people don't expect it for them that end up doing decades.
I knew I would stay in at least 20.
Yeah.
My dad was a career guy, and so that was the easy. I knew I'd be in for a while. Mm-hmm. It was when I became the old guy behind the desk that I would look around the office every day, and I expected somebody to poke their head through the door and be like, all right, bro. Yeah. We figured it out. You don't belong here. Let's go.
Yep. So post-Navy, you've transitioned into the business of coaching, which in my mind is such a seamless and natural thing, being at the level that you got to in the Navy, just the level you were at leadership-wise and the strategic things you were likely asked to do or did. Was that something you always saw for yourself, or was it something that just kind of happened organically?
very organically. I had planned, I became a Master Chief. I was selected around 20 years, and I was still at MARSOC, was still heavily involved in the medical side of it. And I really thought I would come back from my last deployment. I was going to be the CMC. I knew that. And I planned to get out and go to PA school.
Oh, really?
I did.
I learned something new.
I had a binder. I just threw it away when we moved the last time, but I had a binder with all the PA schools. I was really looking at ECU, which ironically is where my daughter is now. But I was going to live in a trailer, like a travel trailer, so that my girls could stay here, and go to PA school. What happened was I would have to go up to DC quite a bit for meetings and stuff. And I have a friend who's what I call an apex predator, and a big corporate stuff. And he's been doing that 30 years plus. So we'd always hang out. I'd crash at his house, whatever. And of course, we talk about everything. And we just ended up always talking about work, but it was the people side of it. And though he's out there doing multi-gazillion-dollar deals and I was doing military stuff, it was interesting to me, Sarah, because everything we were talking about was the same. It was just, they were people issues.
Yeah.
And one evening I can remember we were at a bar. It was him and I and like 2 or 3 other people randomly. We might have even been in the hotel bar. I don't remember. I just remember the setting. And he was telling me about an executive coach that his team had hired for one of his up-and-comers. And of course, I'd heard the term, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So I went back and started doing research. And at this point, I was out of MARSOC and I was into the conventional side. I think it was at 2nd Marine Division at the time. I don't remember. I might have been at the MEF. And I just remember thinking that's what I want to do. Because as I transitioned out of MARSOC and decided not to pursue medicine, it was because I didn't anticipate loving that job as much as I did.
Yeah.
So it was in that 23, 24 year range, I guess, maybe 22, that I was like, wow, this leadership thing is really fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally was getting paid to go around and talk to people.
Yeah. I think with people stuff, you almost don't realize that can be a job. It's like the best parts of your day, you can create that into a career if you love people. I mean, if you love anything, if your best part of your day is when you come home and paint a picture, like go start a business.
Right.
And I think it's so cool when people can transition and find what was once the best part of their day and make it their whole day and their whole, business that they do. So how was becoming an entrepreneur post-military? Was that seamless for you or was it rocky? I know some people kind of thrive in that unknown, scrapping something together on your own. And for some people, it's a little bit harder.
It was both for me. And as you're going through, like I went through coach training to get certified and all that stuff. And someone said during the training, and I found myself saying it later to others, there's the business of coaching and there's coaching. And I had to learn the business side of it. So that was challenging and interesting because it's, of course, in the military, we're not worried about marketing and money and all this stuff. So I had to learn, and a lot of that was just trial and error and teaching myself. But it was rocky at times. But I also, as a guy who's got a pension and everything, I've got a safety net.
Right.
And I have that conversation with people sometimes that are interested in coaching. The first question I ask is, do you have to make money or is it just kind of a nice to have? Because that's 2 different conversations.
Right. So want to get into some of the themes you see with coaching and some practical advice or tools that people can take away. One of my goals with this podcast is everybody walks away with something that they've learned or something practical that they can use in their day-to-day life. So I know this is a hard question, but with the people and the groups that you've worked with as a coach, what are some of the common themes that you're seeing when people come to you for individual coaching or when you're assessing some of these organizations and some of their challenges and opportunities?
Communication is a big one, and having a difficult time communicating first with themselves. And this is a standard militarism, right?
Yeah.
You've got to be able to lead the person in the mirror first.
Yeah.
So that, and the other, I would say the number one thing is overwhelm. I see so many leaders at all levels that are overwhelmed because they're trying to do everything for everyone.
So tough question, but I mean, okay, I'm overwhelmed. I'm burnt out. Where do I start?
Boundaries. We've got to start with boundaries. And setting the boundaries, enforcing those boundaries or reinforcing those boundaries. And then, the way we do that is to ask yourself, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if that's personal, if it's professional. Everything I say yes to, I'm saying no to something else.
Yeah. I want to go back to that because other spoiler alert for this conversation is I've used you as a coach. So 10 out of 10 can endorse your services and approaches on life. This is also a marketing campaign. But the whole concept of boundaries really fascinated me because the concept of boundaries is not new, right? But I think I've always thought of boundaries as, I have a crazy ex-boyfriend and I blocked his number. I set a boundary. But, you don't think of boundaries as something in the professional or personal space with your time or with, how much of yourself you want to give or can give. And one of the things that you had me do that was really a game changer for me was I felt this sense of burnout and also like I just didn't have enough time in the day and I was always just kind of making up for the last day I had. My problems were spilling into the next day and I was waking up with this sense of kind of anxiety and overwhelm. And it sounds simple, but most answers are simple.
They are.
You just had me say, what's your boundary with time at night? Like set it. And I think I did 10 p.m. That's kind of become more fluid and I've scaled it back to a little bit earlier now, but I do not work past 10 p.m. no matter what it was. And I found that when I set that boundary, I worked harder to respect my time because it was almost like I had bedtime, like I was a kid again.
Sure.
Like I was racing against the clock. I remember being at my mom's house and saying, she was teasing me. She's like, you have to leave. You have a boundary to adhere to. I think setting those guardrails for yourself, I think most human beings, we like knowing what to expect. And when we do that for ourselves, it's almost kind of liberating.
100%. And also what I like to call the want-need matrix. So we oftentimes say, well, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Well, do you want to do that?
Yeah.
So ask yourself first, instead of let's replace should with want. Do I want to do this? I should be more productive at work, or I should be exercising. That's an easy one. I should be exercising. What do you want to exercise? Well, I want to be healthy. So when you answer yes to your want, then the next question is, what do I need to do in order to get what I want?
Right. And I don't want to lose the other point that you made about when you say yes to something, thinking about what you're losing or what you have to give up in the process. It's another tip that you gave me has been such a game changer at how I look at my commitments. And it's things as big as, can I take on this project at work? And it's things as small as, do I want to go to church on Sunday?
Sure.
And I think before, and I'm sure that this is applicable to anybody who's a classic overcommitter, I was blindly committing to things. So blindly committing to volunteering for this organization or blindly committing to a social obligation. And all because I like all of those things, right? We want to be a part of everything. We have fear of missing out. But basically I was just creating this cyclical pattern of dread because I was committing to these things and then getting there and thinking, what the hell was I thinking when I committed to this? Because now I have no free time to focus on me or be present for my personal life or things like that. And I think it's just such a great rule with anything to think about every time I say yes, what am I losing? Do I want to lose my Saturday? I know right now it doesn't sound like a big deal, but when I get there, am I going to feel awful if I spend 6 hours of my Saturday doing whatever I just committed to?
Yeah. And it's, if you think about it and kind of scale it back, and you touched on it there with the church thing, but if I want to spend more time with my family, then I need to set boundaries. And so the boundary might be, I'm only going to work until a certain time.
Yeah.
Right. And if I say yes to extra work, then I might be saying no to my kid's soccer practice.
Yeah.
And it's just as simple as that.
Yeah.
And the kind of the spoiler alert, if you will, for all of this leadership stuff, even just being a good human, there's nothing new under the sun. It's really all in how you present it.
Yeah.
so that people are like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's kind of like setting a budget for your life.
Absolutely.
I remember when I first started adulting, quote unquote, my mom said, you'll never worry about money if you set a budget. Because you'll always know when you're over or, under indexing on something. And when you set budgets with your time, there's not a lot of room for guilt or feeling pressure because you already know what your limit is. It's like, I've filled this box. I can't exceed it, or I'm out of money. I'm out of time. I'm out of resources. Going back to communication, so dysfunctions are opportunities for better communication. I'm sure that, I don't know if I've been in an organization or seen an organization that's like, we, communicate perfectly. Everything is just going smooth. There's always something going on. So, if you're doing kind of a 360 assessment of communication, is there a question you start with or an exercise that you have people, begin with to start exploring communication in their organization?
Yes. I always look at the assumptions that are being made.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it's cross-functional communication. It's finance doesn't understand operations.
Yeah.
And, name the teams.
Yeah.
Right? The thing that we do the most is make assumptions about others. And especially team to team. I see it all the time within organizations. So if I don't understand what they do, then I make these assumptions. Well, they don't really work hard, or they don't really need the money to do that, or whatever the assumptions are. But as we seek to understand other teams, other individuals, then we show appreciation on different levels.
Mm.
And when we seek to understand, show appreciation, it changes the way we communicate.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you said perfection, because I always say don't get stuck in the pits. Perfection, immortality, and time travel don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
We're all going to die, right?
Yeah.
And time is the one thing that we spend without knowing how much we have left in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And time travel, we can never go back and fix something. We can only learn from it and move on.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're working with your teams in that communication piece, you've got to strip away those assumptions and ask yourself, like, am I really understanding what they do?
Yeah. Can you think of a good example, like practically, where you saw someone do it? Was it, sitting in on other departments' meetings, or like what was the kind of tool that they did to implement it? My
favorite story out of corporate, I was working with an organization that was a large franchise group, and we were working with the C-suite. I 1099 and contracted for somebody else to do this job. And we're in the C-suite, there's, 6 or 8 people in there, whatever it was. Opening part of the workshop. I was like, all right, go around the room, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do, typical icebreaker kind of stuff. And Sarah, I think it was a third person. Somebody said, oh, I'm so-and-so and I do X, Y, and Z. And literally somebody from, the other side of the room said, yeah, and you also do A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And then somebody else in the back of the room was like, no, I'm the one who does that.
Oh, man.
This is in the C-suite.
Yeah.
I knew we were in for a ride.
Yeah. So it's like people not knowing what other people do or what they do.
That's right.
Or what's expected or what other people's expectations are of them.
And when we make those assumptions about other people or other teams, 99.9% of the time they're wrong.
Yeah.
And the number one assumption that I see people make about other people, especially in the professional environment, is that nobody works as hard as I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we start to resent them.
Yeah.
And in reality, they do work as hard as you do. They just do something that you don't probably understand.
Yeah.
And the best companies that I see, and I'm not talking down to the detail.
Yeah.
But if I have a general, if I could paraphrase, you do this, that's good enough.
Yeah. And this is, this is the value you bring. And then also these are some of the challenges that you have. I think it's always enlightening to me when you can understand the reason why, another department might be slow on something, or why it's not a priority for them because they have X, Y, and Z going on.
Yep.
So yeah, I love that example. What about, so going back to kind of things that individuals kind of commonly struggle with or probably come to you for help with. So perfectionism and guilt. I don't know if I've found many tools to move past both of those things, but I do think that they're heavy drivers for a lot of the negative feelings or just things that people are carrying, especially people who are leaders, whether that's at work or at home or wherever it is. Any thoughts there, common things you've seen in coaching?
The common thing is that it's common.
Yeah.
Right? Especially in the professional side, and really even sometimes in the personal side, asking yourself, where is that coming from?
Yeah.
And this is where it can be challenging. A lot of people feel like they have to get something perfect. Perfection doesn't exist. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? So if you can figure out where it's coming from, where that need to be perfect is coming from, who you're really trying to please, that's where you start. Because then you can kind of set a course to say, okay, well, either what I'm trying to please or whom I'm trying to please doesn't exist, or it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And kind of back to that yes-no matrix. If I'm chasing perfection, what are all the things that I'm saying no to by trying to achieve something that's not really achievable?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's something that I feel like is chased for so long, and so many people never take the time to ask themselves where it's coming from. And I'm curious, is it and I don't know if you get this deep with most people, but is it most commonly childhood, or is it later in life that it's developed?
I feel like it's childhood mostly, either from high achieving parents having kids, or kids that, were kind of put on the pedestal. And in coaching, I always, because I get asked all the time, what's the difference in coaching and counseling? Because we get deep in counseling, or in coaching. And of course, they get very deep in counseling.
Yeah.
I always tell people, if you're looking at it from the perspective of a car, in counseling, they want to open the trunk, pull out every bag, unpack it, lay it out, and inspect everything that was in that bag. In coaching, we'll open the trunk, we'll see what we're carrying, and then we close the trunk and get in the front of the car and go.
Yeah, that's why I do better with coaching than I do with counseling. I'm like, I don't really want to look at all the individual parts. I just kind of want to know what the diagnosis is.
Well, and again, it goes back to that perfectionism.
Yeah.
Sometimes whatever it is you're carrying can't be, I'm using my air quotes, can't be fixed.
Right.
It is what it is, and that's that
Right.
time travel. We can't go back and correct whatever it is that happened.
Yes.
We can just learn from it and move on. So
yeah, I think there's a lot of peace that happens when you just kind of learn to accept something as it is. Like, if I'm a perfectionist, I'm likely not going to wake up one day and not give a shit about what other people think. It's just not going to happen. And so there is a peace, I think, that comes from the acceptance of, like, this is who I am and I understand why. And then here are some practical tools to deal with it. I don't know that the end goal can ever really be, I'm just going to stop being like this one day.
Right. And that's that building the relationship with the voice in your head.
Yeah.
That perfectionism is coming from somewhere, and that voice in your head, and I always say, we got to personify it. Let's give it a name. Let's assign it a character, whatever it is, because then you can more accurately say, okay, you're driving me to be perfect. Whether it's one of your parents' voices, whether it's a bully from high school, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
When you do that, you can eventually build a type of relationship with it where it becomes a co-pilot. And every once in a while it might say, you need to keep going, you could do that better. But if you've built that strong relationship with it, you can look at it and say, that's good enough for what we're trying to achieve. Let's keep moving on this other thing.
Yeah. Want to backtrack to the voice in your head a little bit, because that's another thing that you've taught me. And again, it sounds basic. Like, I think everybody knows, like, I have a voice in my head, right? That's kind of guiding me, or some people literally like hear the voice in their head, some people don't, but it was helpful for me to quite literally like draw what that was for me and what it looked like. So can you explain that method a little bit of kind of diagnosing and describing what that voice is, and then how to kind of reimagine that character so that it's more productive and healthy?
The first step is really quite literally to personify it, whether you're, I always say mine is a mixture. There's three of them. It's Ted Lasso, who's kind of the coach.
By the way, Jody does a lot of pop culture references in his coaching, and it's fantastic because people actually pay attention. But keep going. Yeah.
So Ted Lasso is the coach. Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec is kind of my voice of reason.
Yeah.
And then the Tasmanian Devil.
Yep.
And that's my ideas and the invasive thoughts and all those things. So I can't draw, so mine are not drawn out, but I ask people to either, identify who they are. because oftentimes it is the bully from school.
Yeah.
And so once you have an idea of what you're working with, then you can look at it and say, okay, well, that was a bully when I was 12. I'm 51 now. Am I going to let some bully, 12-year-old bully, have that much influence over what I'm doing? And sometimes when we put it in that frame, it's like, this is silly.
Yeah.
I would never let a 12-year-old kid bully me.
Yeah.
And so then how do I want to start creating that conversation? And what are the things that I need to strengthen? And I always say, you've got to get that bully in a room sometimes, or that voice in your head in a room, and wrestle it.
Yeah.
And we have to build our muscles in certain areas.
Yeah.
So if it's perfectionism, if it's self-doubt, if it's lack of confidence, if it's overconfidence, if it's ego, all of these things, it's like going to the gym. You've got to work out those muscles. So when you get in there to wrestle that voice in your head, you can submit it and say, all right, now get back in the co-pilot seat.
Yeah.
And as a child of the 80s, I view myself as like a giant robot. So the voice you're hearing is probably coming out of my left eye, and then my co-pilot is in the right.
I love it. This is kind of a different sidetrack, but you just made me think of something. So we talk a lot, I think, when you're talking about coaching, when you're talking about self-development, typically we're talking about the character that is a perfectionist, who is down on themselves, who doubts themselves, who struggles with imposter syndrome. Have you had any success coaching someone who is very egotistical and over assumes their, I guess, importance, whether it be personally or professionally?
Great question. Yes, a couple. One of them was a very, they ran the United States department, if you will, for a big company.
Okay.
And I'm trying to be very careful to make sure I protect anyone's, So they were known throughout their industry to be very egotistical and had a very bad reputation.
Did they come to you, or did
they did?
Okay. All right.
Well, that was another one that I caught through a larger consulting company, and they to date are probably still my most favorite client.
Yeah.
Because they were committed to the process, and we worked together for about 2 years.
Yeah.
And I loved it. There was so much growth.
Yeah.
We had such great coaching sessions. And that's really where coaching works, that you have to be committed to it.
Right.
But to answer your question, and when really as we started breaking it down, I think a lot of it was they just didn't understand necessarily how they were coming across, or their brain was going faster than their mouth could, catch.
Yeah.
They had kind of that chain link filter instead of a Brita filter.
Yeah. And I think that if you are that type of egotistical, it comes from a place of just wanting to be heard a lot of the times, or it could be the same starting point as somebody who undervalues or underestimates their worth. But they're two coping mechanisms, right? One is to just continue to put yourself down, and then one is to prop yourself up so high that you can't really get any feedback. But yeah, most certainly you have to want to grow in order to
100%. Coaching doesn't, process. Really very little will work if you're not committed to the process.
Yeah, but that's so interesting because, like I said, I feel like we talk a lot about perfectionism and guilt, but it's not often, people might bring up people who are like that at work, but it's not often talked about, like, getting over your own ego or getting over yourself, which is something that we all have to do at some point, probably.
Yes. It's just another emotion.
Yeah.
Really, you're feeling these things. And we can never control what we're feeling. That's another basic, right? We all know that. Whatever I'm feeling is going to happen. It's a matter of how I express it. That's the piece that I have control over, is how I express whatever's going on in here. And then how do I want to express that? So being very deliberate and making sure that you're having the impact on those around you that you want to have. Or if you're going to have a moment where you need to scream and pull your hair out, to say, all right, I got to go for a run, or I got to take myself away from others.
Yeah.
And that's the weather system that I talk about sometimes, realizing that we're our own weather system. I had a boss, I don't know if I've told you this before or not, but they were like a thunderstorm.
Yeah.
And they would walk through the halls rumbling and grumbling and would strike out like lightning at anybody, totally random.
Yeah.
And so, just like you would see in a real storm, people would run and hide.
Yeah. Boss in the Marine Corps.
Of course.
Yeah. Going back to the egotistical, or struggling with the ego. So for someone who is struggling with their ego, what are because when I think about struggling with your ego, I think about it almost like you have this armor on, right? So you're kind of blocking out feedback from others. You're blocking out the ability to be challenged, and you're kind of a hard-headed person. What are some steps to kind of start to strip that armor? Because I think when you start stripping that armor, it feels a little vulnerable because you're kind of admitting defeat. Maybe I'm speaking from personal experience. Maybe I'm not. But what are your thoughts there? I
always say identify the left and right lateral limit, right? So identify someone who you think is really good at something and someone who is really bad at it. Mm-hmm. So if what you feel is an overinflated ego or your ego's getting in the way, identify someone who you think has a lot of humility. Mm-hmm. And then identify someone else who you feel maybe even has more hubris than you. Mm-hmm. What are the traits and characteristics that made each one of those come to mind?
Yeah.
And those are your left and right, like they're the rumble strips on the road. Mm-hmm. Now throw all the traits and characteristics into the middle of the road, both good and bad, that you either embody or want to embody. And then you can begin to create your own definition of how you want to be perceived and how you want to show up. Mm-hmm. Once you've identified those things and said, here's how I define the type of human that I want to be. Mm-hmm. I want to be humble, but I want to be confident. I want to be a great listener, but I also want to be heard.
Yeah.
Whatever these things are, now you've got a path that you can start to drive. Mm-hmm. And also you've got those rumble strips on either side of the road. Mm-hmm. So that if because sometimes great traits and qualities can be too much.
Yeah. And
if you veer off to one side of the road or the other, it rattles your teeth and gets you back on the path that you've chosen.
Yep. Love a visual. And I've participated in your coaching individually and through a seminar, and you had us do a visual with, getting in and out of those boundaries on a road, which is always helpful for me. So you have two people in an organization. One is over-indexing on the ego, and one just despises that person because they over-index on the ego. What are your thoughts on how those two people can move past that and work well together?
Both people have to figure out their own communication style and what they've got going on inside. Mm-hmm. And that's why I always start with leading the person in the mirror.
Yeah.
What am I bringing to this? And then you have to bring them together so they understand each other's communication style. Mm-hmm. Both in the sense of, and I'll use tilt as an example. It's one of the assessments I use a lot. If I'm I'm a connector, right? I'm a connection tilt. And then structure is my polar opposite, my flip side mirror. Those are the people that want a lot of data. They want, objectivity. Whereas I want to introduce everyone. I want to get consensus. A lot of times people are at odds there, and it's less ego-based and more just what I need. Mm-hmm. What I need to communicate or feel comfortable and confident. So once we've established that, now we know and have a place that we can meet in the middle and truly understand, okay, are we at odds or are we just having a hard time communicating?
100%.
Every rom-com ever written is based on miscommunication.
No, it is. No, there's like that. I forget what you call it because I've heard this analogy from you before. There's like the one defining moment where they realize they've been on the same team forever, but they're miscommunicating on this one thing.
The one word. So I always say define it before you talk about it.
Yeah.
And the easiest example to use is, as a parent, right? If I tell my daughter, hey, go clean your room. Mm-hmm. But I don't specify or set expectations of what clean means.
Yeah. What it means to you.
Right. So I go in there and I can see the floor. I can even see the top of the dresser. But then I look over and I notice the closet is bulging like a bad 80s movie.
Right.
And then I get on the floor and I look under the bed and something's staring back at me like chewing on Cheetos and drinking Mountain Dew. That's not clean.
Yeah.
But if we didn't set that expectation. So before you talk about anything, and I tell you with relationships, whether they're personal or professional, when there's conflict and when people are arguing, they're usually talking about the same word with completely different definitions.
Yeah. My fiance is listening to this right now, thinking about 2 weeks ago when we realized we had different definitions of household chores and cleaning. But it's just, and I said to him, I never explicitly told you what I expected or what this meant to me. I've just been asking you to do something, or you've been asking me to do something, but we haven't just been super clear on this is what would make me happy if it was done this way.
So it's all about building trust.
Yeah.
And, you probably remember from that workshop, right? I call it EAT, the acronym. So it's expectations, and that comes from a place of clear communication, setting clear expectations, And ultimately that will either build or deteriorate trust.
Yeah.
But the bridge between expectations and trust is accountability and advocacy.
Yep.
Because if we set clear expectations, if I tell my daughter, here's how I define clean, here's what I expect, now I can hold her accountable and advocate for the family, right, that her room is not clean or is clean, and that either builds or deteriorates trust. And then she can advocate for herself if I come in and say, well, why haven't you done this?
Yeah.
Well, because you didn't ask me to do that.
Exactly. And I think just quite simply too, when you're at odds with someone professionally or personally, something I've done is I try really hard to find one little thing I like about that person.
Yeah.
Because if you start kind of chipping away at that, like if I just can't stand Jody when he speaks in meetings, I'm just like, oh, this dude, like, here he goes again. And everything he does just annoys me. I'm going to find out what Jody's hobbies are, and I'm going to start there, because then I will start to see the side of him that lights him up. And then we start to kind of just break down these walls that we build up around each other, or assumptions that we build up around each other.
So what you're talking about is a communication formula. Because if I seek to understand you better as a human, I'm going to show you appreciation and receive appreciation from you.
Yeah. And
that changes the way we communicate. So let's say I am the one in the meeting who never shuts up, but you start in the way that you have. You're kind of coming in from the flank, if you will.
Yeah.
And you start talking to me about surfing. So now we're building a relationship based on understanding, and we're appreciating one another. At some point, you'll be able to say to me, hey, Jody, you talk way too long in the meetings.
Yeah.
Right? Because we've established that trust.
Yeah.
But that only comes from a place of understanding. If we're not communicating with understanding and appreciation, you couldn't say that to me right out of the gate and expect any real effect.
Exactly. So moving forward, so one other thing I wanted to chat with you on is going through transitions and change. So this was one of the reasons that I sought you out as a coach, was I was still going through, and still honestly am going through, a transition phase in life. And whether you're a veteran or whether you're just a human being living life, because life comes with transitions, something that I've struggled with, I know I've had friends and people in my life struggle with, is the feeling of I'm not meeting this imaginary expectation that I have in my head of my life. So that could be personal milestones. So, marriage, kids, money, whatever. Could be, I'm not doing this job that my friends are doing. I haven't gotten this degree. And I was struggling with that when I started working with you, because I felt deep down, I love my life, but there are some things that don't look like my peers who I was in the military with, or who are my same age, and kind of reconciling that and feeling just a sense of self-assuredness that just because my journey or what I love or how I spend my days doesn't look like yours does not mean that I'm, failing or falling behind. And so I know some of your approaches to that, but I would love for you to share some of that with our listeners.
I mean, it really comes down to, what do you want, right? And then getting out of that comparison mindset. What you're talking about is comparison mindset. I'm comparing myself to you. But the reality is, I don't know what's going on with you. It doesn't matter how close we are. I don't know what's going on with you.
Yeah.
Nor will I ever. And that's where we have to start. Because if I can get myself out of that comparison mindset, now I've created space to ask myself, have the conversation with the voice in my head and say, okay, well, what do I really want?
Right.
And now we get back into the want-need matrix. What do I want? Well, I want to have a relationship with someone. Okay, well, then what do I need to do? Well, then I need to create space in my life where I have time to pursue that.
You need to download Hinge.
Right. Whatever that want and need is, you can start to build a path there.
Yeah.
But and I, of course, I'm going to sound like an old dude now, right? But having seen before social media and after social media, it's crazy, because you're constantly flooded with all of these things.
Yeah.
And it's, I call it Facebook happy, right? It's a shell. And I see this in organizations all the time, where it seems like it's got an amazing culture. It seems like a great company, but it's no different than that Facebook couple that everyone knows.
You start peeling back the layers.
Right. Yeah. And they're not happy on the inside, but if you were just to look at the outside. So when you realize that, then you can take yourself out of that comparison mindset and say, whatever I'm seeing may or may not be true.
Yeah. What are some questions that someone could ask themselves, like, 5 questions to assess, where do I actually want to be, or where do I want to be heading?
I think it's kind of shooting a resection, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I use this when I talk at the Honor Foundation quite a bit. Sometimes I don't even know where I am. And for those of you that don't know about, land navigation, if you don't know where you are and you've got a map and a compass, you can look at 2 things on the map that are known points. And then you shoot a reverse azimuth and it tells you where you are. Mm-hmm. And the more known points you have, the more accurate you're going to figure out where you are. So start with something as simple as, what do I want to do and what do I not want to do? Right? What are the knowns? And then figure out where you are. Because if you know where you are, then you can start to chart that path of where you want to go.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. What do I want to do? Well, I want to have a relationship. What do I not want to do? I don't want to be working 80 hours a week, or I don't want to be concerned with what everyone else is doing. Kind of back to that good and bad. If anytime you do that, that works with everything.
Yeah.
If you want to define leader, who's the best leader, who's the worst leader? Do it with mentor, do it with friend, do it with spouse, do it with whatever you want to determine what your definition is. So I would say shoot that resection, beginning with what you do and don't want to do. Yeah. And then start asking yourself, well, what do I want out of life? Where do I want to go?
Right. And I think it's hard for a lot of people to honestly answer that, because most of the time you might be answering with the answer that was given to you and not what is deep down in your heart.
And that's where you have to strip that away.
Yeah.
And that takes work.
Yeah.
And I think that's a key takeaway, is none of this stuff is overnight. Mm-hmm. I'm 51. I've been working at this stuff. And to me, that's the beauty of it too, those areas, because I'll never have it right.
Yeah.
Perfection doesn't exist. I mess up and I learn from it and I move on. And it's a constant reminder that it will never be perfect. And what did I learn and who can I share that with? Mm-hmm. So that I can be better and maybe have a positive effect or impact on someone else and keep them doing the same thing that I did. Mm-hmm. But it's the journey. Yeah. Right? And then along the way, you have to stay flexible. You have to be dynamic. Yeah. And not be afraid to pivot. Yeah. And that's easier said than done.
Yeah. And there's I'm speaking from personal experience, there's guilt and shame in the pivots, right? It's like, oh man, my friend, she's been crushing it for 5 years doing the same thing, working towards the same goal. And I've kind of zigzagged. And something that was shared with me with one of my other favorite life coaches, my mom, is your pivots can sometimes be your secret weapon, because a lot of the times the pivots are, I've picked up lots of lessons along the way, or I've dabbled in different things and I've become kind of this multifaceted person. I've learned so much about myself, through all of these different experiences and through maybe getting it wrong a few times and then getting it right, other times. And so I think it's important to kind of remove some of the stigma behind that.
I love what you said about the pivots, because if you were to reframe the pivot as information gathering. Yes. So think about the person who's been running a straight line, in your example, 5 years of doing the same thing. That person only knows what's been going on that straight path for 5 years. Whereas if you're pivoting, you're gathering all this information. Yeah. And that could be the turtle hair thing, right? Where maybe they're ahead of you now. And again, getting out of that comparison mindset, because who cares? Mm-hmm. But it's not to say that you've gained so much information that it's going to benefit you later. Yeah. And not in comparison to that person, but just for you as an individual. Yeah. Right. So I would say reframe it into information gathering.
I love that. That's such another good visual, just picking stuff up along the way. And really asking yourself to, if there is something in your head of, I feel like I need to make X amount of money a year, or I feel like I need to have this title or this house. It's like, well, when did someone tell you you have to have that? When did it start?
My coaching has worked. You're like,
yes, I've learned so much. Yeah. But it's so important. And then, when you peel it back, it kind of makes you realize how unimportant it all is. It's like, oh, it was just this jerk who I worked with who said X, Y, and Z. And then it got stuck in the back of my head and stuck with me. And you brought up the point too that, a lot of the times, we know this, but it's still hard to really know it, that the people we're comparing ourselves to are not necessarily feeling great about their lives either. And so it's just thinking about your path and staying on your path.
I think about it like a dartboard. The people that are in my 10 ring are the people that really matter to me. Yes. And if one of those people says, hey, Jody, I feel that whatever you're doing is whatever. I will take that to heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I, so really I said instead of a dartboard, it's probably a target, right? Because I don't know if there's a 9 ring and an 8 ring on it, but you get the idea.
Yep.
The further you get out, the less I care. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but the less I care about your opinion.
Yeah.
So I guess determining for you, who's your core, who's the bullseye.
Yeah.
If your mom said something to you, that probably has a much greater impact than if, Bob, who's not even on the dartboard, says something.
Yeah.
And it's our ability to identify that when it happens.
Yes.
And Mel Robbins, right? I love Mel Robbins and her book, Let Them have that opinion. That's fine.
Yeah. It's the dartboard analogy, which we've also talked about before, is a really good analogy for people with social anxiety, because everybody's had those days where they come back from a party or a social event and they're like, God, I was talking to that lady Judy and I said this thing and I probably sounded arrogant and now she thinks this about me. And it's like, okay, maybe you did. Where does Judy fall in the priority list, right? Yeah. And if someone named Judy is listening to this, I'm not talking about you. I don't know why that name came to mind. I have Judys in my life that I care about. But, really thinking about that, and it's helped me kind of get out of these places. I mean, I was, before we started talking about this stuff, losing sleep over social interactions with people who, it's not like they suck, but they're not, my core people or my mentors or my close circle that is near and dear to my heart. And it's probably one of the most liberating things. It feels like you lost 10 pounds when you have a social interaction that, maybe it was a D- social interaction for you. We all have them. And you just think, it's all right. Life goes on. Or the person probably wasn't listening because I'm not really that important to them,
Yeah, maybe you're not on their dartboard, right?
Yeah.
And so the other thing, too, is what did you learn from that?
Yeah.
And what can you carry forward?
Right.
Maybe next time I'll try to be less talkative or not talk about that topic or whatever.
Yeah.
So I always, again, we're information gathering. We're constantly information gathering and making ourselves better along the way.
Yeah, I love that. And, again, personal, social interactions, work interactions, it's a really, really important thing to learn. The last thing from a coaching perspective that I wanted to talk about, because most of us struggle with it. I think if we knew how many people struggled with it, we'd be blown away, is imposter syndrome. And feeling a sense of inferiority in what we're doing, whether it's how we parent, how we, lead at work, how we, show up for people, whatever it is. And what are some of, I'm curious if there is a trend with this, what are some of the trends with imposter syndrome, perfectionism, all these feelings across age, generation, gender? Are there any trends that you see?
That's a great question. I don't know if there's any trends that are generationally based or gender based. And that's, I think speaks volumes to what it is.
Right.
We as humans ask ourselves, or maybe don't ask ourselves, but tell ourselves, I don't belong here. Mm-hmm. I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, I used to sit in my office and think, okay, the boss is going to poke his head in the corner, in my office and be like, all right, buddy, come on.
Literally.
So it happens to all of us. Sometimes when I'm working with clients, I go in and I'm like, oh, am I the person for this? Or what? Why did they bring me in?
Right.
What made them reach out to me? When I first left MARSOC and went over to the conventional side, I was at 2nd Marine Division. I remember we were in a meeting and the boss was there and, all the colonels and all that kind of stuff. And I came from a different world. I grew up in a different world. Things are vastly different in the community that I grew up in and the community that I was now a part of. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting at the head of the table with the boss. And at the end, he said, "Come on, Master Chief, what do you got?" And I actually had something because they were all thinking about whatever it was in their way. And because I came from a different world, I had a different perspective. And I appreciated that he offered that. Mm-hmm. And he's one of the most amazing leaders. And then it made me realize, and this kind of set the stage for me with imposter syndrome. Doesn't mean I didn't have it still.
Right. Yeah.
But it helped ground me. I come with a different set of experiences.
Yeah.
I come with different information.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here for a reason. And the reason is to provide what I've gathered along my path.
Yep.
What have I picked up and put in my information bag?
Yeah.
And that's what you bring. And so no matter what you're doing in life, when it comes to imposter syndrome, remind yourself we're all different, and that's what makes it beautiful.
100%.
And that's what makes it work.
100%. I had a recent moment with my manager, and I was talking to him about something with my role, and he said, I'm feeling a little bit guilty or weird because I don't have experience in X, Y, and Z, and I know it's part of my role. And he was like, yeah, I'll teach you that. I'm bringing you on because you know how to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm not very good at that, and I know we're going to be a great team. And it was just this light bulb moment that I was so hyper fixated on the experience I didn't have and not thinking about, okay, well, what do I bring to the table? Why did he want to hire me? You know what I mean?
And that's the classic reframe.
Yeah.
Instead of going to the negative, and here's the tip, right? Look at it the optimistic side. And I'm not talking about toxic positivity or everything's great, but look at it optimistically and say, what do I bring instead of what do I not have? Mm-hmm. And remember that if you built a team, and use whatever sports analogy you want, and you had all the star players, but they all played the same position, the team would suck. Yeah. So the idea in any great team is that you've got all these different people that are amazing at what they do. Mm-hmm. You put them together, and that's what's going to make the team work. Mm-hmm. So anytime we're feeling that sense of imposter syndrome or I've got to be perfect, remind yourself it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And then ask yourself, what do I bring to the team that nobody else has?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I want to really point out that I know this from talking to you about this before, that these are emotions that do not know rank or position or age or gender. It is felt all the time. My first boss in the Army, who I literally thought walked on water when I first met him, I remember him telling me he had imposter syndrome. And I'm like, you are the most respected, beloved person in this organization. Yeah. How do you even doubt yourself? But it's felt by everybody. And something else that we've talked about before is just kind of stripping the armor back from how we perceive other people. Everybody walking around has their own set of things that they're dealing with, and really humanizing people. So when you feel that sense of inferiority with a boss, or you're giving a presentation to people who you feel are at this elevated sense, or you're interacting with people that intimidate you for some reason, really just stripping them back and seeing them as human beings, which is so hard. And I'm not saying I've mastered it, but really kind of thinking about the fact that every person you're interacting with has a journey. They have something that they're dealing with. They have something that kept them up last week, made them not sleep because they're worried about it. And it just kind of brings it all back to we're just all humans. Like, we're all just humaning in this life, you know?
And when you connect on that level too, the other thing that I've had to struggle with, because, one of my core values is humility. Mm-hmm. And I know I take it too far sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I had a really hard time in the past accepting compliments.
Yep.
I've learned to just say thank you. And I've realized that also fuels imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. Because when someone says, hey, you're really awesome at whatever, instead of just saying thank you, accepting that, and then using that to kind of fortify my sense of, hey, this is what I bring to the table.
Yeah.
Right? What do? We say, oh, no. You make excuses about it. Well, now you're not filling that tank. You're not polishing that armor. You're not, you're dismissing it. And so then your brain, especially that co-pilot, is like, okay, dismiss. And the next thing you know, you're not believing other people when they say, I know, you're good at that.
We've talked about this before, and I truly believe that when you don't accept a compliment, you're insulting someone.
100%.
You're basically saying, you don't know what you're talking about. I actually suck at this,
That's
know?
Right.
And it does, in time when you begin accepting compliments and accepting positive feedback, it's a muscle. Like, it's reinforcing something in your brain that you are good at what this person says. And it also allows you to have a moment to kind of connect with someone instead of just boxing them out of giving you positive feedback or praise.
And also, I would say, 90% of the time, people, they mean it when they say it. Yeah. I'm sure there's, in the young single dating world, I'm sure there's times when people are just saying things to say them, but 90% of the time when someone says something to you, they mean it.
Yeah.
And that should go in your information bag.
100%. So speaking of imposter syndrome and doubt, want to talk about a project that you have coming up.
Talk about imposter syndrome.
I know, right? So tell our listeners about what's ahead in terms of some of the stuff that you're working on. I don't want to spoil it.
I have a book coming out. It should be in July.
Awesome.
I'm waiting on the first pass of the developmental edits. So I've working with the team at Girl Friday. They're, one of the top hybrid publishers. And I wrote the book over the span of 4 years. It really took about a year. I was doing nonprofit stuff for a while and didn't touch the book. And so I've just finished it and waiting on those edits to come back. The book is called Good Humans Make Great Leaders.
Love it.
And it's everything that we're talking about. It's written for young people who are aspiring leaders, young people who are brand new leaders. Really leaders at any level. Anybody can benefit from it, but I specifically targeted these groups, or people who have found themselves in leadership positions with no development whatsoever, which is over 80% statistically people in the workforce.
Oh, wow.
According to the internet, right?
No, that's it's an interesting number. I believe it.
Yeah. They've received no leadership development. And the gap that I find in the leadership book world is they're either all about how you show up as a human or all about leadership, but nothing that connects the two. So my book is written in two halves. And the first is, how do you define being a good human? What does it mean to you? That's the foundation on which you build great leaders. Just because you're a good human doesn't make you a great leader, right? That's a skill set.
Yeah.
And I always use Michael Scott as an example. He's awesome. He's funny. He loves everybody on his team except Toby, of course. But he was a horrible leader.
Yeah.
A horrible leader. And he is a classic example.
Yeah.
So, kind of the mantra is, just because you're a good human doesn't make you a great leader. You have to be a good human to be a great leader, but it's not automatic.
Yeah.
So it'll be out hopefully in July.
Yeah.
As long as I can get the edits done and back and all that good stuff. And then each of the chapters, they're written for people with short attention spans also.
Perfect.
So it's 1,000 to 2,000 words per chapter. So literally just a few pages. And then there'll be questions at the end of each chapter.
Cool.
You could read it straight through, but the way I want it to feel like this. I want it to feel like a conversation. You read a chapter and then you take those questions and you go think about them.
Yep.
And then move on.
I'm just super excited for you and want to give you kudos, because I truly believe that writing a book is one of the most vulnerable things that you can do. Because, you could record a podcast. Some people might listen to it. Some people might not. But that's a back and forth. Maybe you're collaborating with someone. You could make some art. People probably won't buy it if they don't want it. But people will give you feedback on a book.
Well, and 2 nights ago, I met the developmental editor in a meeting. And then, she's like, okay, I'll get it back to you by this date. I think it was 2 or 3 nights ago. I was up, to your point, right?
Yeah.
I was up like, oh my gosh, what is she going to think about this chapter? And, she's probably going to think I've, got like a 3rd grade education, and just getting into that wheel. And it's not even out in the real world yet.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I'm just going to have to work through that.
I think it's going to be great. But it's important to put ourselves out there with these creative ventures. I remember one of the first entrepreneurs I met after the military. I can't remember how he said it. He said it very eloquently, but he said something to the effect of, oh yeah, I've failed at my first 4 businesses. This is number 5. And it really clicked for me that like we're going to chip away at creative ventures, hopefully, and I'm sure your book's going to be amazing. You hope like, okay, the first time I do this is going to be great. But, putting yourself out there and learning along the way, it's just part of the process. Like most authors have written multiple books. Most entrepreneurs have started multiple businesses. And it's the title of this podcast, putting yourself in the arena of life and putting yourself out there for the world to see. But it's important. And
also realizing that you're not everybody's cup of tea.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier, I use a lot of pop culture and all that, and it never fails. Like every few workshops I do, if there's more than 35 or 40 people, not every time, but every few, I'll have 1 or 2 people on this end of course survey that give me ones.
Yeah.
They're like, I hate this dude.
Yeah.
And so I have to remind myself that the book will find, or my workshops or my work will find the people that it resonates with. And everybody else, that's okay. There's other work out there for them that I hope supports them along their journey.
Right. And if everybody liked it, it probably wouldn't be that impactful.
Right.
Right. If you're doing something that's important or dicey or cool, it's not going to land with everyone. And if it does, then it's, it's like white bread. I guess everybody likes white bread. Not everybody likes rye bread because it's a little got more seasoning.
And it's not that nutritious.
Right, exactly. There's not that much to it. It's not that exciting. Well, I'm super excited for you and super proud of you for putting yourself out there and pursuing something new. I think we could talk all night, but we do have a limited time, and I'm sure this is just the first of many conversations, hopefully, that we can collaborate and dive deep, but really just appreciate all the work you do. I think you did an amazing job of being our first dude on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it was last week I spoke at my daughter's sorority.
Yes, we should have talked about that. So,
oh my gosh, I was nervous.
My favorite LinkedIn post that I think I've seen in God knows how long was a selfie of you in front of a sorority chapter. And I was in a sorority at an SEC school. I know how hard it is to get in front of a group of however many young girls.
And talk about leadership.
Yes.
We use Love Island. Yeah. That was the trick.
That's the trick. But I appreciate everything you do to connect with all generations, the advocacy that, I didn't have enough time to get into all that you do, but the advocacy that you do for veterans. You treat every person that you meet with respect and just light people up and make them feel seen, and just have so many practical, amazing things that we can put in our toolkit for how we show up for ourselves, how we show up for the people we love, how we show up at work. And so just super excited that we were able to have this conversation, and everybody just keep an eye out for the book that's to come. I know I'll be buying it. Maybe we'll do a little book club episode.
That'd be great. Thanks for having me. It's been an honor truly to be the first dude on the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
The Women in the Arena podcast is powered by Iron Butterfly Media, a production company committed to honoring the lives of women who have had an unseen and outsized impact on our world. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have a woman who you would like to nominate as a guest, please shoot us a message on our social media platforms. Be sure to subscribe and follow on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. See you next time.